How does one best use a desire to do good?
Best use a desire? I think the real question there is whether or not the desire is using you or you're using the desire, see, and where it's coming from. So it's really more about understanding where the desire is coming from. Stated the way you stated it sounds very simple, very clear, but we don't know where that desire is coming from, and I think that's really the question. So where does the desire come from? I think it's a real question. And then if we're talking about desire to give, that is also more complex than it sounds like. Say. Desire to give under what conditions, to whom, why, and so on. So these are the questions, not just the desire to give. We're not talking about giving, we're talking about desire. You understand? We're talking about desire, and that's its own karma. And giving is its own karma. So you can say, well, when you give, to cut it short, or desire, what about desire? I think they're two different categories.
Can I ask, what is giving?
Well, giving can happen by itself. Giving is an appearance of something going from one spot to the next spot, or from one person to the next person. And so we're talking about the mechanics that appear to be giving, and then what is real giving if we're going to use it in a certain way. It could be out of the heart somewhere. So we're talking about, well, where's it coming from? What is the motivation for giving? Giving what? Somebody a punch in the nose? A kick in the butt? A hard time giving? So giving is an interesting word, but we need to see what the context is for the giving. Giving what to whom is really what is being begged for more than anything else, rather than just giving. By our very presence we're giving. By our silence we're giving. And by our actions we're giving. By our own feelings and emotions we're giving. We can say more technically we're giving off. See, we're putting out there what is within us, what we're feeling, what we're thinking. Maybe what we want to do but we're afraid to do. We're giving that off. So giving is a very complex proposition. From what level of consciousness is giving? Giving. Right? So, because with the same phraseology, say, well, I'm going to give you, let's say, love, but I'm going to take it. I'm going to love you, but I'm going to take it. See, so we're talking about human relations, and we need to know what motivation is, and what giving is in a specific context. Okay? And that's because we're complex human beings. We need to know what it is. So the mere act of passing something on to someone else is an appearance. It looks like maybe generosity, maybe it's a debt paid, but maybe it's full of hostility. Right? Maybe it's a trap. Why are you giving me that? It's a good question when somebody's giving you something. And then what is it? It looks like this, but is it that? Where's it coming from? So it's risky. See, to give is, in these terms, is risky. To receive is also risky. That's why we're talking about practice. Spiritual practice brings you to a place where you're able to understand psychically, because we're talking about giving and receiving without any psychic sense. We need to arrive at a psychic sense of reality so that we know who's giving what and how to best receive it, whether that means with resistance or with complete openness and surrender to it, say, and grace, gratitude, and so on.
So then, would the impulse to help others always be a positive thing?
The impulse to help others could be a strategy, could be strategic, with gains. So in other words, it's maybe a form of business between you and yourself. The I, me, and mine programming. They, them, it, whatever it is, could be an organization, could be a situation, could be a family. And so we need to know exactly then, if practice is going to bring about what we're going to call neutrality, enough to make giving not giving, but in intelligent sharing.
So, charitable acts part of a spiritual life or spiritual practice?
It can be. We're talking now about the potential of good intention, giving without giving, but we call it a charitable act. And then the person, depending on whether or not we could, know the person's mind, they could be giving because they have a compulsion to give. They have to give. An irrational compulsion even to give, because they're touched in a certain way. Like, for instance, giving under tragic circumstances or catastrophic conditions. Giving when, let's say, there's a storm or a tornado wipes people out. Everybody's moved to give, and it's pure selflessness at that point. Your heart's just going out. It's being pulled out of you. So you're not really giving. You're opening to a need that is bigger than yourself and your sense of self in others. It's beyond that. So we're saying then the Spirit demands. You're moved, in other words. And so this is a different kind of giving. So that this whole concept of giving is very important. The more we look at it, we need to know what giving is and what it isn't.
So can the desire to help others be destructive towards them?
The desire to help others is usually the desire to help oneself. So we're saying now the issue of, or the mechanics of projection come into this. Why? Okay, why help others? Are they really dependent upon you to help them? That's a different thing. So for instance, if we're talking about this kind of programming process of giving and receiving, at a family level, it's like not giving at all. A relative comes in, they say they need a shirt, give them your shirt. Shirt off your back, as the old Christian saying goes. Right. And so that's something which is more spontaneous. It's like understood, there's no complication in it, no politics involved. But typically, when we're saying giving outside of the family is more politically charged in a certain way. So people want to know why you're giving what you're giving. But there is being moved by compassion to give. And that's unique. And you say, I had no choice. I had to give. I mean, people don't even know why they give. That's good giving. That's good giving. See, selfless giving is the place to be giving anything from it. But then you're not giving anything. Something you're doing, see, because you're moved to do. You're not giving. You're receiving when you're doing it. Say, no, I feel better when I give. So you're gaining. See, in other words, the situation is giving you a chance to feel yourself, to feel your goodness, feel your compassion, feel your heart. And that's a different kind of giving. It's irrational. It's mad. It's also selfless and benign. So it's a purificational. Everybody gains from that. You give, then we can say you give to give, but there's no you involved, and there's no giving involved. So as such, it's not one way. It's giving, receiving, and receiving, giving. See? So it's a little bit more technically complicated in a sense, but spiritually, that's how it shows up.
And would you say that people use charitable acts as a diversion from dealing with their own conditions, their own needs?
Can be. A certain kind of deviant motivation there, a certain kind of personal agenda or egoic agenda. Yeah, people are always looking for advantage. We're talking doing things in the guise of generosity, but it's really politically motivated to gain advantage, to gain control over people or, over people and things. So, well, I gave this, see, so I'm a good guy, or a good lady, a good woman. See, so I'm not saying that's bad. Giving is giving. But then giving is more than giving, depending on your motivation, and the skunk juice you either add to it by your motivations or by your political machinations. And then it may not be bad then either, because you might unconsciously be helping other people by involving yourself in politics or in a political situation, social, societal situation, helping other people. You don't know who you can actually help. So even if you're the most selfish animal in the world, giving, in some cases, is going to reach somebody. So it has skunk juice attached to it on one end, but it's received with full heart gratitude.
Would you say that different religions and traditions view giving and charitable acts differently?
I think the world in general likes the idea of giving. Because that seems to resonate with the function of the heart in everybody. So giving is good practice, generally. Giving more is not necessarily better. Giving less is not necessarily better. Giving this is not necessarily good, and giving that might not necessarily be good or bad. So, if we have some kind of higher or deeper, more heartful kind of basis for what it is, then it's beyond judgment. So we're talking about then giving beyond judgment, beyond prejudice or beyond, appearance. That's important. Again, we're talking about irrational, selfless giving. Is not crazy giving, it's very intelligent giving, you see. So there is an inner superconsciousness that's behind some acts of generosity, compassion, and giving, and it's correct, it's absolutely correct, it's perfect, in fact. So some acts are simply, utterly perfect, others are suspicious, strange. If you find a, say, $1 billion check on the street, you're not going to believe it. You're going to cause a riot if you tell other peeps. Somebody's going to pick it up and they're going to say, man, I don't know what that is, but I want, that's mine. It ain't yours. So, and again, we're going to the person, not really the thing, we're going to the individual. It's the self involved. It's who. Then it becomes who's giving, who's receiving. That's another dynamic. Like a grain of rice to a starving person is everything. A drop of water to a thirsty individual is everything. I mean, it's God. So we want to be able to understand the God factor, some kind of higher spiritual understanding of what it is. And then we're talking about receiving at a time when you critically need it. There's something about that which is not divine in a sense particularly, but is powerful. It's not about a God, it's really about the machinery of karma, cause and effect, and how the coincidence shows up to you. That exactly when you need something, without you setting it up, it seems, something is there for you to take. So it's given somewhere in the machinery of the karmic field, but you don't know what it is and who set it up, and then all of a sudden it shows up. Could be a quarter on the street when that's exactly what you needed to do. What you needed to do, let's put it in the slot for parking meter or something. Well, give it to someone. You see the quarter, you want it, you're moved by someone you see who's maybe a derelict, male or female, a bad person. You say, no, I picked this up. It belongs to them. And you know that. So it's like, all you have to do is pick it up. You don't have anything to do with it. You say, it's yours. And you know it.
So for a developing spiritual practitioner, is it more important to stay neutral than to help others?
It's more important to be open to the right vibrations. And we're talking then, it takes practice. We can call it neutral. That means specifically not passive or irresponsible. Some people say, oh, neutrality, that's being irresponsible. This thing warrants a yes or a no. Not a maybe. But maybe is probably, in some cases, the most responsible thing. Neither one thing or the other. So then there are three choices. The neutral, but the awake and intelligent, creative neutral. And you have the positive, the yes, and the negative or the no, which then we spin it around and say, well, the negative might be very positive. Who's to say? Being against something could be extremely positive. Giving may be the best thing. Depends on what your resonance is with what it is, and the only way you're going to find that out, depending on what the situation is that's begging for you to give, is to understand what the heart of the issue is. So we have to practice from a heart place to be open. That's neutral. That means not biased. See, not disturbed, but clear. Neutral, clear. Not against, particularly. Not for either. See? But responsible for the clear. And then, if you said, well, I started out neutral, clear, and now I'm going to the positive. Or I said, no, I began neutral and it was clear, and now I'm going to against as a positive thing. And the positive is a negative thing. So it really depends. We're talking about the human state, the human condition, the mind that's behind these operations. And that has to be responsible for what it does and what comes back from what it does. And when we're talking about society where so many confused people off the path, afraid of the path, avoiding the path, then we're talking about a lot of self-deception, a lot of confusion, a lot of self-division and conflict going on. They don't even want to talk about the path. Because already the idea of the path resonates with them in some kind of demand upon them. And it's not that they don't want the demand, they don't know what to do with the demand. They're not clear enough because they're confused. I mean, they're too owned by opinions, expectations, and let's say programs of other peeps. And that's what it is. They don't have a clear reading on it, so they can't be neutral. In this sense, clear. Clear.
So is the, let's say, development of openness and a neutral point of view, is that a trial and error process?
Trial and error process?
How does
probably,
one get there?
Probably, we learned that the long and hard way by sensing how and in what way we are moved, let's say, to help a derelict out, and then how, let's say, we change. We change. Now, you may help a derelict out, whoever it is. Doesn't have to be a racial issue. Could be from any country. And you help them out because you feel their need, and then you see exactly where they go, right? Let's say they might go a few feet down and meet somebody, and there's a drug deal, you see that. But you were moved, so you got to feel okay about that. Say, oh, well, I feel good because I just helped them make, score what it is that they have to do, or go into a liquor store. And yet they're saying, let's say, which has happened to me many times, I need something to eat. Please help me. They're wearing the signs saying, haven't eaten, I'm a veteran, right? I'm a wounded veteran, and so on. And, to move you, and then all of a sudden they're crook. And so what do you do then? You can go back to them and say, hey, or do whatever you're going to do, but you're learning. See, so then you're learning to judge better. See, and then next time you see somebody a certain way and you get a feeling from them, you may pass on giving them that, or you may actually, which is what I've heard. You say, hey, I'm giving you this for the food. But if I see you after I give you this, hear me clearly, going to do something else with it, because there's a restaurant over there, I'll take you in there yourself, myself, and get you something to eat. Because if I see you, I'm going to, take it back from you. There's that possibility. But you have to learn what it is by experiencing the givingness, your impulse, and then seeing if it's correct. Because it could be something where you see, a person does go into a restaurant immediately, because the impulse was true. And they get the food and you see them, and then they come out, in some cases, if you're still around there, and they thank you and say, see, you helped me to eat today. God bless you, which is what you usually hear from them. And they mean it with all their heart, because they're down and out. And I have met lawyers and doctors, as well as many artists who are down and out because of alcoholism. Right? And addiction to alcoholism that they couldn't fight. They just didn't have it in them to fight. It was too blood strong. So the giving then is, in this case, is part of your training and, let's say, a way of determining for yourself how to sharpen your judgment in these cases.
I'm wondering about how much responsibility to take for others. In that case, would it be proper to take someone home here, you're homeless, live with me,
It depends on what you get. It depends on your sensitivity. It depends on your heart feeling. Because if we open the envelope up a little bit, and I think more spiritualistically, you never know if that derelict is your former grandfather. You feel a connection with him, but you don't know. You feel immediate kinship with whoever it is, hobo, male or female. You don't know if it's a past relative coming back to test you, in a sense. I mean, it's very hypothetical, but could be somebody of real spiritual significance, but you can't recognize it. So you never know who it is in sheep's or lamb's clothing or in wolf's clothing. that approaches you, anywhere, anytime. Because you got to know where your heart is with that, and you got to feel it and know it correctly that way. Because you can see somebody in rags, really completely unkept in a sense, you know, and feel something good. Say, wait a minute. Who are you? I need to help you. This happens. So I don't know why. I just need to help you. I got a feeling I have to help you. Or you pass them and you go back to them. And then you find that they're a very beautiful person. And they don't even know how they got where they are. And then you say, well, this is a tragic thing. But great, because we met. What can I do for you? It could be something, and they can say nothing. It's too late. So we never know, in those instances, who we're dealing with, unless you know yourself.
And how about more remote cases where people, let's say, fly to another continent to take on a cause and work for something they really know nothing about, but they feel, you know, this urge to do good.
Or you can be pulled from anywhere to find peace. That means sometimes you're called to go to different faraway places and be among strangers to find your next step, right? Like a James Bond movie. You know, he has to go to certain places and look for the clues. And this is how our life is. I mean, we're living in a James Bond movie when it comes to these things. See? We have to read the signs for ourselves and know what it is and hope we're right. The only way you're not going to know is just, you know, test the signs. And this is for many peeps who are seeking peace, happiness, truth, some kind of relational, let's say, equilibrium, right? The right partner for the time being, co-worker, see, the right connection. They have to experiment, see, test themselves, and make mistakes along the way. But maybe in the process of making mistakes, you're learning, you're taking notes, psychic notes, so you're making sure certain things you don't fall prey to. Say, no, I've seen this setup before, I'm not going there. Even if it's good, I'm not going there. Now, I've done that already. Don't need to repeat that. Let me look for different indications. And there you find different indications, different leads, and different evidence for yourself. So you can verify your own direction, your own path, and your own guidance accordingly. And that's what we need to do. Test it, test the field, test the peeps, test ourselves, make mistakes, and then get it right, which is the, you know, the triumph. There's the victory, see, personal victory, success, when you start getting it right because you were willing to learn in the process and not afraid or withholding yourself back from experiencing things. So no, that didn't work, so I'm not going out there to do that again. Oh, it depends on what your path is or what your search is. You want to make sure that you learn from it and then you find yourself on the right course, doing the right thing, getting the right results, and getting closer to whatever your goal might be in some material or spiritual sense.
So is that kind of focus on, let's say, the outer world at odds with spiritual development in terms of the inner world?
Well, there's one world and it's inside and out. We are the inside and outside world. This is the outside-inside world. We are that. We are the left and the right, the higher and the lower. We're all of that. We're the total, in miniature. We're the past, the present, and the future, at the same time. And so we need to know that. We are responsible for what it is and how we interact with what it is, even if it shows up as guidance, and we're dependent upon the spiritual. Being open up to the spiritual doesn't mean that you're free of spiritual mistakes, spiritual misperception, misunderstanding. So that has to be tested, as well as material karmic situations and say tests and trials and pitfalls and misdirection, because there's a lot of misdirection out here. We have nations that are misdirected. So they got to take a step forward, they got to take 2 steps backwards, change direction, take another step forward. And see what they need to do, whether it's in combat or politics. You got to retrack yourself, redirect yourself, make sure you're going the right way. This is true. It's the same in music. You know. You start out playing something one way and say, this is not going right. You don't feel right. So what do you need to do to recover it? So this is true in art and science and everything else we do as human beings. Walk down the street. If you feel you're walking down the wrong street, the wrong side of the street, you got to change up. If you trust yourself, then you know by changing you're doing the right thing. Or the wrong lane in terms of driving your car. So that you're centered and your interaction with the universe, see, that is the time-space world that you've agreed to be a part of, right? Your environment is working for you, working with you. You say, yeah, no, that was a close call because I'm working with this. Close calls, no problem.
So how do we determine our level of, let's say, responsibility to our fellow man?
Well, that's up to the individual. Your responsibility to the other man, if we're talking about compassion, is to give the other man space and give yourself the space. You got to give yourself space and then give others space. It's space to operate in, space to breathe in. That's responsibility, is breathing space, psychic space, first and foremost. All the other kinds of spaces you can add to that. Right? Giving people their space is very important. Because when you don't, you crowd their space, and when you crowd their space, you hear about it. They get back to you, so you get your feedback. The idea, of course, is to honor space, respect space, give people their space, so that you give them the freedom. This is what I tell certain peeps, like around us, relative to some of the musicians I deal with. You know, they're social figures, they're political, figures, they're musicians, so they're representing their music or their school of thought or their background or their culture or whatever. They need a space to do that in. So when you crowd them, when you think that they're waiting for you, to just jump on them and validate, it seems like you want to validate them, but you're really validating yourself, then you may have complications. See? And so the idea, of course, is keep a low profile, tiptoe through the tulips, ease on into it, unless you know you have a straight line to be able to make a dive at somebody, and they're going to love you for it. You got to have the signal to say that they're waiting for you, and there you dive in like into home plate, and you're going to have the catcher waiting for you instead of nobody. Right, clear path, you have the catcher waiting to tag you out. Comment?
So how do we determine the line between honoring people's space and getting involved when we see something potentially negative or destructive happening with
always excuse me, always honor people's space by having the attitude. Everybody's space is honored already, unqualified. And you tiptoe through that. Try to feel it out. Be careful not to go up to somebody's face, right in their face, and show up there saying, "I'm just checking your space out," because you might get some feedback. That's that kind of feedback. It could be light, it could be heavy feedback, and you may then be going against your best interest. So the idea is not to jump on peeps, but just be smooth, be careful. Spacious, be space granting in the process. Now, I think that is true in our personal lives and true in our business lives. Create the space, that's what courtesy is about. That's what they say, grace is about, being gracious. And so we have a right to do that, and then there are times when you might have to defy that. It depends on what it is. If somebody's drowning, you're not going to be asking them politely, "Can I save you?" No, you can't do that. You have a life there, then the circumstance warrants violent, even aggressive, extremely aggressive behavior. You have to reach in, pull them out, regardless of whether they resist you or whatever. If that's what you feel you want to do, save their life. Now, of course, they might say, "I didn't want to be saved." You got to deal with that dilemma. Once they're up on the ice and you put them out of the ice, they say, "Hey, this is my moment. You ruined it for me." And yet you save them, everybody's going to applaud you, and then you have bad karma with the person. See, you don't know.
So then is the Good Samaritan type of attitude proper spiritual practice?
Well, if it's an agenda, if it's a program, then we have to suspect what it is, Good Samaritan. I mean, a real Good Samaritan is not a Good Samaritan. It's a person that knows what to do when the time comes. And they'll do it. And these are the people who sincerely feel they're not a hero or a heroine or whatever. They're not, that's not what they do, that's not what they want to be, but they acted accordingly, whether that's in combat or on the street or under certain kind of difficult situations. But when we're moved, we're going to do what we feel we have no choice but to do. So you say you're a hero because you lifted the car up to save the person. I had no choice. In fact, I didn't do it. Something did it. See? And that's fair. We can say that that's true for the person. See? And then we're talking then about inner power, which we have. We don't want to discount that or disregard that. Yeah, there's inner power. So then going back to what we've been saying all along, now you got to be in touch with the inner power in terms of giving. Who to give, so on and so forth. In other words, try and find some inner clearance, if you can, psychically or however, see, emotionally, so that you're okay with what you give no matter what happens. So you're not giving for a certain result. Sometimes you give for a certain result. Sometimes you have to give to heal something between you and another person. And that's fine. You want to make up something, a wrongdoing or something, and you give and you sort that out and put it to rest. So we need to balance some of these things out, and so that's what we do when we're in a situation where that can be done. Say, we need to talk about this so we can straighten this out. What can I do for you to make up for what it was? Whether it's a fender bender or some kind of damage, property damage, or whatever the situation is, you want to show up in such a way that you want to help balance the karma. You have to give back, because you didn't mean to, let's say, destroy the grass or the landscape, and so you want to let them know you want to make up for it, clear your karma.
So with the world so full of problems, is spiritual practice a luxury or a necessity?
Well, it's both. Right? Spiritual practice is a joy, it's a luxury in a sense. But it's also, a very serious process. It's not easy. So it's really necessary, if you have the perception and or the recognition of what it is that it shows up as an advantage for you. So spiritual practice is not particularly just what you do. People can do yoga and say, well, that's spiritual practice to relax their body, and it is. Spiritual practice is ongoing process. We can say it's spirit practice, that means it's breathing practice. Spirit is breath, so it's really breathing. How you're breathing with the world is what spiritual practice is about. And whether or not what's coming back to you is conducive to what you call a happy life, or a peaceful life, or a healing life, or let's say a good life, or the spiritual life in terms of like what you can't see, what people can't see, that you're feeling good about. Let's say the transcendent or invisible world. So for some people that's the spiritual. It's not church, it's not the belief, it's not faith, but it is what nobody can see. And they say, oh, this is what it is for me. Nobody can see it, you can't touch it, but you can interact with it. See? That means the astral world. So we are part of the astral world, and that's part of the causal world. And, not very many people know enough about these distinctions relative to dimensions to be able to make a difference for themselves. Because we're talking about subjectivity and inner perception. And not everybody has the same kind of refinement. So not everybody's going to be able to validate the fact of the astral world as much as other people can already. Or the causal world, or the certain mental worlds, or the creative world. So you have to know what your abilities are, and what your tendencies are, and what your gifts are, or what your needs are, and then you move accordingly. So therefore it's practice. But then there's training, which is what practice is. Everybody's here for training. Everybody. Everybody's here to improve their game. Everybody. Whether it's to make money, or to feel better, or build your body up. And I know a lot of people into bodybuilding, so it helps them out. Just into running, calisthenics, sports. To keep the heart going, keep the brain going, keep themselves feeling like they're actually able to accomplish other things. So that's part of the spiritual is not just religious, it's how you see what you see. Spiritual then can be seen in the higher sense in terms of going beyond what you see, going beyond yourself completely. Because when I talk about self-development, self-training, that's one level of it, that's the beginner's level of it. The idea is to get to the point where you're not doing anything anymore, and yet it's all happening. Then we're talking that's a higher spiritual, where it's doing for itself, through you. And that's a maybe abstract, incomprehensible kind of idea, or reality for some. But that's what spiritual practice is about. Turning your life over to spirit, the superconscious. And we have to go now to New Age philosophy to understand what that is.
And would you draw a distinction between giving and sacrificing?
No, it's the same. Sacrificing could be personal. Say, hey, I made a sacrifice. I worked more hours this week just for you. Right? And then you wonder, is that a sacrifice? Is that kind of torture? About torture. Man, I just put in 10 extra hours and this is what you give me? Right, so the word sacrifice can be used, but it's not like losing a hand. Like say, no, I'm giving up an organ for somebody. That's a sacrifice for a loved one or something like that. A body part, giving that up. And then being happy about it. But you're doing it to see somebody else have a life. And so that could be a good thing for you and for the other person. So sacrifice then means giving something from the heart that is not taking from you. Say, no, I can afford sacrifices. Say, give it up. Say, give it up. Say, throw it away. Sacrifice. But we're not just saying to nothing, to nobody. Say, to give it up. Say, no. It needs to be this way. And then we're going back to the original thing I was saying earlier, being moved to give. Say, being moved to sacrifice. Whether that's like economic resources or other kinds of material resources. But we also have spiritual resources, we also have emotional resources, we have creative resources as well, not just material resources. We have artistic resources, not just scientific resources. You can give love, you can use that from your mouth, love, and feel, bring the person to another level. Don't forget, I love you. Feel for you, care for you. It's part of the healing process. Sometimes a person is in let's say, under the influence of a paramedic after a serious emergency, and they're in, I guess they're on the stretcher, not sure about themselves. They don't have anybody with them. They don't have family because this thing happened, whatever it was, happens in a remote area somewhere. And then the medic, male or female, says, "Don't forget, I love you. Stay here. Stay with me. I love you. Stay here with me. Don't go anywhere." God can be an anchor to life. Then we're talking about a life anchor. See? So that he sacrificed himself to say, "I love you," or she did that to help this person, help bring them back in or connect with them, and that's important. Yeah? That's a heart connection. See? That's using the heart. That's giving up selfishness for another person. That's part of the spiritual.